Welcome everyone to the show, CT, and I'm joined by a very special guest, the one, the only Howard Beck, covers the NBA for GQ Sports, the Locked On Network. Howard, it's a pleasure to have you on.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. And I know it's been a huge season. How are you enjoying the NBA playoffs so far?
It's been wild. As you and I record this, we're between, games 5 and 6 in in the Eastern Conference Finals. And that series alone has been obviously quite a ride. But then you just think about the way this playoffs began with a 6, 7, and an 8 seed all advancing for the first time in NBA history. The Lakers being a team that a couple months ago everybody had kind of written off, and then to see them, get all the way to the semifinals, obviously got swept by the Nuggets, but to see the Nuggets emergence, to see the Warriors and Lakers battle, to see Steph versus LeBron again, not every series has been fantastic, but there's been a lot of just, the unexpected. I think the best part about sports is the unexpected, and sometimes things get a little bit too predictable. This postseason has been, I think, anything but. Yes, we do have the number one seed in the West in the NBA Finals in the Denver Nuggets, but there was plenty of different twists in the West along the way, and in the East we still may end up with an 8 seed in the finals for the first time since your New York Knicks made it back in '99. So It's been wild. It's been fun.
Well said. Well said. I think there's a first for everything. We have the Nuggets in the finals. We have a team that may come back from 3-0 down. I'll get your thoughts on that. If that can happen, it may be the best chance. We saw the 8 seed beat the first seed once again with our Knicks involved, but on the wrong end. How did you see the Knicks season? What were your impressions overall? I know you're in the building for some of the playoff games.
I think the Knicks, and I said this, at some point. I don't remember if I tweeted it. I don't tweet quite as much as I used to, but I thought the Knicks, no matter where things ended for them, that this was a wildly successful season, that they overachieved. And all you have to do is go back to October and look at whether it was the odds makers or pundits in the business who trying to figure out where the Knicks are going to end up this year. And given last season, I think everybody kind of had them in the same range, right? Like, 37, 38 wins. Hey, if everything breaks right, maybe they hit 500 and they're in the play-in or something. To be a 5th seed, to have, I think, as successful of a season as they did, nobody could have seen that Jalen Brunson was going to be quite this good. To see the bounce back season by Julius Randle after having everybody writing him off again, which understandably, justifiably so after the previous season, to make the playoffs, to not just make the playoffs, but to make the playoffs as a top 5 team, to then win a first round series and lose to a team that, again, as you and I record, may well end up in the NBA Finals. I think by any measure, this was a wildly successful Knicks season and a really impressive one.
Yeah, definitely it was. It was good to see the Garden rocking again. The last time you were in the building for a playoff game was 2013 when you covered with the Times.
Yeah, and that, the funny thing is, so they finally ended the playoff drought a couple of years ago in that series against the Hawks, but we were still coming out of COVID then and all the restrictions that came with it. So because of that, there wasn't a lot of access. So I wasn't going to those games. I could have gone to those games. There just wasn't really much reason to go. The building still wasn't at capacity either. I believe they still had all the limitations in place across the league. And so this postseason was really the first real postseason where you could, with full fan engagement and the Garden rocking, everything back to normal since 2013. And that was literally my last year working for the New York Times, covering the Knicks. And so that run, of course, ending against the Pacers in the second round. So it's not that you forget what the atmosphere is like, but and it's certainly there are other arenas where it can be rocking, right? Like the Celtics fans are always, and I've been to obviously a bunch of playoff series there and final series there. That place really just can rattle your skull at its peak. The Warriors at Oracle Arena before they moved, of course, and then all the NBA finals that we went to there. There are plenty of other places where it's just incredible, the atmosphere. But the Garden, as everybody will tell you, is special and it is different. And Knicks fans, especially now, because, and again, this is not to diminish what they did 2 years ago, but I think there was still a little bit of that pent up energy based on a very long playoff drought. And even though that playoff drought ended 2 years ago and not this year, this year was the first time it felt like they were all the way back and with the fans too. And so it was absolutely incredible. Like the game 3, so the first playoff game of this postseason at the Garden, the crowd intensity and volume before the game had even begun, before player introductions had even begun, was something. Everybody comes alive at any arena. Once you get into intros and the game, this was like, long before. And then the first Cavs possession, the defense chants were already at a fever pitch, as if it were like the waning minutes of a fourth quarter in a tight game. So it was absolutely incredible. And yes, it was a nice reminder of like what that place can be.
I think the most satisfying feeling, Howard, right now that fans have is that it feels sustainable. You've talked about how 2013, I think you did report a lot about, how fickle that club was in terms of the roster construction. But now it's so sustainable with, young pieces in the rotation. One memory I can remember, I think you were working with Bleacher Report at the time, and it was an off season, and you were doing a segment reconstructing the Knicks off season, and it was, Jose Calderon, Aaron Aflalo, Melo, Robin Lopez, with Kristaps Porzingis, and that was considered the best the Knicks could make out of that situation. How far have they come now with this roster?
That was what, 2014? I think that was 2014.
Was Phil?
Wow.
Were you there? Was Phil Jackson?
See, I was off, so I wasn't on the Knicks beat anymore by the time they hired Phil Jackson. But yeah, I was, I still live in New York, and I was working for Bleacher Report, and because of all my years on the Knicks, anything Knicks or Nets related, frankly, they were always going to say, "Oh, something's flared up. There's something dramatic. There's a trade. There's whatever." They would always, have me parachute in for those. So I wasn't covering on a regular basis, but yeah, I mean, listen, once upon a time, getting an Aaron Aflalo and Robin Lopez on reasonable contracts felt like kind of some sort of minor victory. This is a much different period of for the Knicks, and a much different off-season kind of victory, right? Jalen Brunson, it wasn't that long ago, of course, that people were debating across the league, fans, media, other executives, about whether or not that contract was justified, whether that was, an overpay by some measure. I was not in that camp, by the way. I thought it was a great signing. I did not expect this, by the way. I don't know that anybody expected Jalen Brunson to reach these levels, and certainly so quickly. But I was fine with the Jalen Brunson deal. I was absolutely fine with, we can debate, or we'll never fully know whether it was them walking away from the Donovan Mitchell deal, whether it was the Jazz walking away from the Knicks, whatever it was. I never had a really big problem with the Knicks not executing that trade either. Like I felt like all their decision making last summer was actually very good and sound, because I covered that team for long enough to know how badly they've needed a point guard for literally decades, and how rare it has been to get somebody who you could really just hand the ball to and say, run the show for us, give us some structure, put everybody in their best spots, and who had natural leadership. I remember from the moment that Brunson was drafted by the Mavericks, how effusive the praise was by people who I know with that organization, just telling me, even his rookie year, a great guy, we love him, which, and it was, more about who he was as a person and as a leader, his overall makeup, more so than it was whether or not they ever thought he could be a star. But people just thought very highly of him. So I thought by virtue of his character as well as his abilities, that was the right move. It was a missing piece. But yeah, I didn't think they would get to this level and so quickly. So to your point, this is different than, like, say, the 54 win season in 2012-13, when it felt like a lot of things just kind of broke right for them. It never struck me as being particularly sustainable, and it wasn't. This is sustainable based on, obviously, the age range, the contract status of all the key figures. They can keep this for a while. I think the bigger question is,
Mm,
how do you take the next step? Because I don't think internal growth is going to be enough, right? It's not going to be enough just to get a few more
mm.
percentage points of development from, you know, uh, Brunson, Quickly, Barrett, Grimes, whomever. Like they're all young enough to keep evolving, but star power wins in this league, right? And so they're
Yep.
still probably at least a stud away, and maybe a couple pieces away. We'll see. But at a minimum, even if they did nothing, you know that they're going to be in the mix, incredibly competitive, entertaining, and a tough out. And so that's a great place to start.
Yeah, it was. It was a successful season, but as that hurt in terms of a missed opportunity? Do you feel like the Knicks, you know, missed out on a great opportunity to beat the Heat, or do you think the better team prevailed in terms of the team that just executed? And do you think the Knicks have capped out with this current roster based on what you just said?
There's a lot of different ways to look at this. So let me just start with the Heat side of it, right? The Miami Heat knocked out a Milwaukee Bucks team that was just won a championship a couple of years ago that has, a superstar in Giannis Antetokounmpo who, however people may feel about Jokic right now, Giannis is one of the top, if not the best player in the world right now, right? So like
Yep.
that the Heat knocked the Bucks out gives you enough to know, and that the Heat went up 3-0 on the Celtics. Even if they blow this series, that they were good enough to go up 3-0 on a Celtics team that had, by everybody's estimation in the league, the best top to bottom talent of any team in the postseason.
Mm.
I don't care wherever this ends for the Heat, however you may view this roster, the fact is the Heat did not have the level of talent that the Bucks did, that the Celtics did, that a lot of other teams did. And that they've gotten this far just shows that they are a greater than the sum of their parts kind of team, that Jimmy Butler has this other gear that he can go to that few guys can summon. And that they do have a style of play, and yes, a culture. I know hashtag heat culture, people hate it, but
We hate it.
that just it's tangible, it's meaningful, it works. So I'm not going to say that the Knicks should have beaten them. I don't know that even if we did the on paper exercise where the Knicks have better talent than the Heat. I mean, they might have, here or there, you could argue for one guy over another, but it's not some great talent gap, not the way it is with the Heat and some of these teams other teams that they've knocked out.
Yeah. We thought we would have the extra depth, I guess, with Hero out and
Yeah, but
Oladipo.
yeah. I mean, listen, it's a funny thing too, right? Like, and I thought the Knicks were going to win that series based on that very factor, right? No,
Yep.
no Tyler Hero, no even Oladipo, even if he wasn't a big factor, but still, you just need good live bodies and playmakers, guys who can handle the ball. And like, here are the Heat without the prototypical elite playmaker, right? Like Jimmy Butler is their lead playmaker, and Bam Adebayo is a playmaker for them. Guys at different positions that are not the point guard, and Kyle Lowry's got a bazillion miles on him, and so they're not built the way you would think a team that's gotten this far goes. But you could go to the other axiom of the postseason, which is the team with the best player, generally speaking, wins. Again, not the case when the Bucks beat or when the Heat upset the Bucks, but Jimmy Butler was the best player in Knicks versus Heat, right? And that would be like 10 times out of 10. He's got the broader resume, the deeper resume. So I don't think there was anything. There was no shame in losing to the Heat. I didn't think they should necessarily be favored, other than I did feel like, with the injuries the Heat had. But hell, they keep showing that those injuries don't matter, that they just keep plugging another guy in, and Heat culture does the rest.
I wrote them off, and I feel bad again because when they finished 8th, I thought, look, the Knicks just have their measure now. Regular season, Julius, but what I've learned again, Howard, I don't think the Knicks have experienced playoffs enough, and we all know playoffs are just something completely different. Like, how would you separate regular season and playoffs? And then based on Tom Thibodeau's, Mark Berman also feels like Tom Thibodeau's regular season record is inflated.
So I wouldn't say inflated. I would say that everybody, especially now in this era of load management and a hyper focus on player health and trying to make sure that your best players are healthy and at their peak going into the playoffs. Every team manages that a little bit differently. The Knicks, clearly not a big load management franchise. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying good, bad, or otherwise, but I am saying that if you're a team like the Sacramento Kings, for example, Kings had almost no significant injuries. They were all in on the regular season because they were carrying a 17-year playoff drought. And so the fact that the Kings prioritized regular season wins night in, night out means that when you come up against teams that are load managing or that are kind
Mm.
of pacing themselves, waiting for April, the Kings are going to have the advantage a lot of nights because they're going to be all
Yep.
out, all healthy, playing big minutes. That's what the Knicks were too, and that's what the Knicks have been under Tom Thibodeau, and that's been Tibbs's kind of MO wherever he's been. So it's not inflated. It does mean that you are going to, by intent, win more regular season games than a lot of your opponents who have decided to manage the season in a different way. Does that mean that your record sometimes looks a little bit better than your actual postseason capability? Well, that was clearly the case for the Kings. Now, granted, they were running up against the defending champs, the Warriors, in the first round. But
Yep.
yeah, I do think it can be a little bit deceptive in that regard. And I do think the playoffs are a different animal. And I do think that ultimately talent wins out in this league, and you need high level talent. Yes, Julius Randle made All NBA for a second time. Yes, Jalen Brunson had a good argument for it. There were just too many damn guards, frankly. But Jalen Brunson played at an All NBA type of level. But do the Knicks have prototypical top tier deep playoff run type of talent right now? No, I don't
Mm.
think so. And that's not a knock. It's just an acknowledgement. Like if you're going to list the
Yeah.
top 20, 30 players in the NBA, what the Knicks have is still going to pale in comparison to a Suns team
Yep.
with Durant and Booker, or a Lakers team that still has even an older LeBron and AD, Steph and whomever, Jokic and Murray, whatever. Like you're still looking for anchors at that level, and that's obviously still the mission, I think, for this Knicks team.
Yeah, still building, Howard. I think the Knicks kind of probably reached this level a year sooner than people
Yeah.
expected, with RJ and Grimes still growing, and I think they showed themselves to have a solid playoffs. Um, with just staying on Tibbs, what are your overall impressions of Tibbs and the way he coaches? Do you think he's a guy who can get the Knicks to that next level with a roster upgrade, or do you think there was significant flaws in the playoffs?
So I live in New York, obviously. I have a lot of friends who are Knicks fans. I have friends who
Yep.
work in the organization. So conversations around Tibbs and around the Knicks are frequent, often. Um, and and plus I'm on Twitter far too much. So I've seen
Yes.
a lot of the criticism of Tibbs from certain quarters of Knicks fandom, and I get it. Like I think there are issues there that are fair to debate. We could get into that if you want, but on balance, I would say there's no question in my mind. Tibbs is an excellent coach. He gets the most out of his players. We've seen that they overachieved the first time they made the playoffs in his first year. They fell a little flat last season, but I think they overachieved this year relative to
Mm.
expectations. If you just were able to plug in a top 5, top 10 guy, can they make the finals with Tibbs' coach? Yeah, of course. If we want
Okay.
to quibble
Yep.
about player development, okay. If you want to quibble about long minutes, sure. If you want to say that maybe he should be more open to load management or whatever, managing guys' minutes in a different way so that maybe they have more left. If you want to make the argument that guys ran out of steam because of the way he uses them in the regular season, unprovable, but a fair theory to discuss. All of that, I think, is fair. The critiques are understandable, but
Yep.
you know, look, when he has talent, you can see what he can do with it. And the one thing we haven't seen yet during Tibbs's handful of years in New York is what would he do if he actually had like a true superstar to lead that team. And that changes everything else too, right? Like your entire rotation changes, the minutes distribution changes, the amount of burden you place on certain guys changes if you just have that one central figure to build everything else off of.
Yeah, I think he brought stability, obviously, and I think a lot of Nick fans, Howard, that like Tibbs, like that he's from, he has roots, coming up from '90s and what he's done to bring, success to the team. But there was some shortcomings. There was still some reluctance to adjust, some rigidity. With in terms of Tibbs's input on player fits, Josh Hart changed the Knicks season. How did you see that? And obviously the way he handled the Cam Reddish situation as well.
Yeah.
That's a kind of a classic example of like Tibbs and Leon and
Yeah.
and what's to come.
Like we still haven't seen anything from Cam Reddish that's going to suggest that he'll make Tibbs or the Knicks look bad. But like it's a funny thing, right? If Cam Reddish at some point everything clicks into place and he becomes this, like, I don't say great player, doesn't become a perennial all-star or anything,
Like
but
Wiggins or something.
yeah, but if he just blossoms, so yeah, maybe it could be like a Wiggins scenario, right, where you go to a different team and you find the right fit or whatever. But Reddish blossoms somewhere else, it's going to be right. Then it's going to be, aha, see, Tibbs was wrong to bury him, and the front office was right to get him, and the disconnect between them was a problem. As of right now, I mean, come on, the Josh Hart trade was low key one of the best deals that any team in the NBA made over the last 10 months or whatever, going back to last offseason. And the Jalen Brunson signing was one of the best too. So credit the Knicks for two of the better acquisitions, period, during that time span. I loved the Josh Hart deal the minute they made it. Having seen what he had done, especially in New Orleans, a little bit of his early years with the Lakers, you could see some of the promise there, and just kind of a unique player. A big rebounding guard, consummate team player. And seeing Jalen Brunson's reaction when they acquired him was just like. Was just such a fun, cool thing. So not surprised that like he felt like this missing piece, right? And a lot of a lot of winning happened after they got him. I still think it's fair to look at like the Thibs tenure and look at the times when it was Evan Fournier over fill in the blank, Elfrid Payton over fill in the blank. There were always these veterans that he was leaning on out of a kind of a comfort in veterans over young guys during its period of time where I think it was fair to say, you know what, they're not going to be that good anyway. This team has a very, very hard ceiling on it. You might as well invest in the young guys. Like that, to me, of all the critiques of Thibs during his Knicks tenure, I think those were the ones that were the most fair, because you looked at it and like, Elfrid Payton's already like hit his ceiling. Evan Fournier's never getting any better than this. And there were a bunch of different versions of that,
Alec
right?
Burks at point guard.
Alec Burks, yes. And so I totally understood Knicks fans' frustrations during that period, especially because it was like, you're not winning anyway. You're not really getting anywhere. Just develop the young guys, see what they can do, give them all the reps in the world, let them make their mistakes. And I'm sympathetic to that. The flip side of that is when you hire Thibs, you know what you're getting, and you hire him because you know he's going to squeeze the most out of your team during the regular season, especially. And they overachieved his first year. I've often said that if there's a critique that I would have made, and I've made this in various forms over the last few years, it's Thibs was the wrong coach at the wrong time. Not as a knock on Thibs, but just the idea that when Leon came in, he was inheriting a roster that wasn't very good, a team that wasn't really going anywhere. I think getting a win now coach meant, and especially with Thibs, you're going to overachieve. You're going to worsen your draft position. You're not really in a position to win at a high level anyway. You might as well play the slow game here instead of trying to overachieve.
Accelerate.
Now, listen. Yeah. Now, every team's got its own philosophy on this about how to approach a stage like that of your franchise's development. How far to tear? If you're doing a tear down, how far do you tear down? If you're quote unquote tanking, how long do you tank? And to what degree?
In New York,
clearly they had decided, and as the Knicks always have, they're consistent about this over the last 20 years. They don't believe they can do a full teardown. I disagree with that. I think they could. I think at times that they should have. I also think that in an alternate universe here, and listen, I want to caveat this for a minute first. There's no underselling the importance of and the benefits of having a team that fans believe in, that get them excited, that make them want to buy tickets and watch games, and that make them feel good. Sports is supposed to be about the joy as much as the agony, right? You can't have one without the other. But I don't blame anybody at the Garden for wanting to give fans, after all that they've been through, a team that they could get behind, even if it had a low ceiling. That said, as a long-term building matter, as a franchise building matter, and easy for me to say because I don't care whether anybody wins or loses in this league. But I would have looked at that moment back in 2020 when Leon Rose and his crew came in. I would have said, let's get a development coach. Let's get Kenny Atkinson or something. We don't need a win now coach. Let's spin off some veterans. Let's not worry about like what our record is in year one of our administration. I'm not looking to try to buy goodwill by winning 42 games and going out in the first round or whatever. I want to accumulate draft picks. I want to clear out our cap. I want to spin off veterans for young play. That would have been me. Again, easy for me to say, not my franchise, not my fan base to deal with the backlash from. But I thought there was a time there where they could have done that. But by bringing Thibs in, and again, this is, a critique of sorts. By bringing Thibs in, you're going to overachieve. You're going to have lesser draft position, and you're not giving yourself a chance to snag that one franchise star. And so now you're in a position where to get that guy, you're either going through free agency, which is always a crapshoot, or you're waiting for the blockbuster trade. And to their credit, they've put themselves in a position to make the blockbuster deal. They've got a lot of young guys who are attractive. They've got a lot of guys on reasonable contracts. They've got surplus draft picks. They're in a good position to do that. That's no guarantee either, as we saw last summer with the Donovan Mitchell situation. But yeah, look, the end result is they're a really good team right now that should be attractive to any stars or veterans to come to. That there's a benefit to that too. But yeah, there's an alternate universe where you go with a different kind of coach and a different approach to roster building and try to play the ping pong ball game just a little bit.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. At that time, I was seriously questioning, okay, like our roster is not where it is. Is that the right option? Kenny Atkinson, I loved. I think, yeah, I'd never really seen a rebuild in my 30 plus years as a Knicks fan, and no coincidence, we haven't won a championship in 50 years. So
there was a pseudo teardown when Donnie Walsh came and he and Mike D'Antoni the first 2 years they were just trading away Zach Randolph and Jamal Crawford and all this. So like there was a teardown because they wanted to get in the LeBron sweepstakes, but it wasn't quite exactly what you're saying, like a Sixers style or Thunder style. Let's just be bad for a few years and take a bunch of bites at the apple.
I mean, Knicks fans not necessarily fall in love, but they will get behind any squad. You've seen these ragtag rosters of Quincy Acey and Shane Larkin, and
Shane Larkin.
We could be on this pod for an hour talking about it. But do you think James Dolan, just sort of going one tier up, do you think he made a good decision hiring Leon Rose? How have you seen the Leon Rose regime?
Ooh, this one's also tricky. I would say on the day they hired Leon, my gut reaction would have been, you're reaching. Leon, obviously a wildly successful agent from a major agency. Are you hiring him because you think he'd be a great basketball executive and will do a great job of building the right kind of roster and managing the salary cap and identifying talent? Or are you hiring him because he's from CAA and you're already very intertwined with CAA as the Garden and you know him and you like him and, oh yeah, we'll get CAA clients because of Leon? It smacked of that, and I have good enough reason to believe after years of talking to people about this that there was a lot of that baked into the decision. So I could criticize the decision based on like they did it for the wrong reasons, and I think they probably did. That said, whatever skepticism I had, they've done a pretty decent job over the last few years, right? Like I could give you a list of things I think they should have or could have done differently, and on draft picks too, right? Tyrese Halliburton instead of Obi Toppin, right? Like, and there's always going to be some of those under any administration. Yeah. But they did an incredible job in getting Jalen Brunson. Again, CAA ties and family ties and all kinds of other ties to lead them to that conclusion. But still, they knew what they were doing and what he was worth. And he probably exceeded their expectations too. Again, the Josh Hart deal was a nice move. They haven't been great with the higher picks, but they've done really well with lower picks, right? McBride and Grimes quickly. So on balance, I there's not a lot there for me to criticize. And the kinds of things that I might flag as like, could have had Tyrese Halliburton. You can kind of do that with almost every team. Nobody's got a perfect draft record. And especially when you're drafting outside of, obviously people make mistakes in the top three too, but especially when you're drafting, 8, 10, 14, 18, whatever, like the deeper you go, the more of a crapshoot it becomes. So, yeah, we could sit here and go point by point, pick by pick, trade by trade, and find some gaffes along the way. But I think that's every team. So no, I think on the whole they've done really well and vindicated themselves pretty well. And look, to Leon's credit too, he hired some really smart basketball people who've been around the league a long time and who know talent and personnel at a deeper level than he does.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing. You just hit on 100%. Gerson Rosas is in Worldwide West. I mean, we could talk about the front office a lot in terms of
Walt
the
Perrin,
size.
Frank Zanin, like there's a bunch of guys who are like they've
Brock
been in
Aller.
NBA front offices for a long time. Yeah, Brock Aller, guys who have been with successful teams, guys who have done all the nuts and bolts for years. So if that's your gap, right? Like so, look, whether you're Bob Myers who came from the agent world or Daryl Morey who of course came up, the analytics route or whatever. But Daryl had all those years as an assistant in Boston under Danny Ainge before going to Houston. But if you get that job without the traditional basketball background, you can still be very successful. Again, David Griffin in New Orleans and previously Cleveland. You can do that as long as you surround yourself with a lot of smart basketball lifers, right? And I think that's what Leon and his crew have done. All that said, I'd be remiss if I didn't at least point out that, okay, cool, but Leon, talk to the media once in a while and explain your vision to Knicks fans, and through the independent media, not just through the media arm of the Garden. Like, just be a little bit accountable and explain the vision, explain decisions, give it an occasional update like that. It's fair to ask. Every other team does it.
Yeah, there's a whole back and forth again online about that. But I don't really know if that's Leon's decision. It might be higher up, the media
Knowing
policy.
knowing the Garden, it is a decision that is to an extent higher up. But that said, even though Dolan has this long track record of being as hostile to the media as any owner that I've seen in my 26 years of covering the league, Phil Jackson was able to, and he didn't talk a lot, but Phil had his availabilities along the way, at least a couple times a year during his tenure. Donnie Walsh, conducted himself in the same way in New York that he did during all of his years in Indiana. Glenn Grunwald was absolutely invisible for his 1 year.
Yeah.
So that's where things really kind of started to turn in the other direction in terms of the front office being completely off limits. But Steve Mills and Scott Perry talked more often. Well, anybody's talking more often than Leon, because Leon hasn't talked at all. But I think, yes, Dolan. But if Leon said, "I really want to do business this way," I don't think Dolan's like telling him no. I think a lot of this is just it's what Leon's comfort zone is too.
His strengths weren't necessarily public fronting, facing. Behind the scenes is where he got his work done. But is it fair to say they're in that honeymoon period now, Harold, where there's expectations? They have, done well for themselves, but where to from here in terms of roster construction? We've got some nice young pieces, IQ, who's stuck behind Brunson, they're going to have to make that decision on. Obi, we mentioned, the what ifs with that. Mitchell Robinson, the shortcomings with offensive game that came in the playoffs, excellent defensively. But what are some areas of this roster where you could see the Knicks, try to address? Do you think everyone's on the table, excluding Jalen Brunson?
So this goes back to my other point about my alternate universe where they choose more of a teardown route. By hiring Thibs, by overachieving, 2 of the last 3 years, you set expectations now higher at a time when I don't. So now everybody wants the next thing, right? Oh, we got to the second round, so next year's got to be the conference finals, or next year's got to be title contention, and that's the difficulty in quote unquote overachieving, is that. And I've analogized this, in fact, to the Atlanta Hawks, who they played in that first breakthrough postseason, where the Hawks went all the way to the conference finals that year. They have been nothing but a disappointment since then. They were way ahead of schedule, but it raises the bar, and now everybody, including Hawks ownership, expects, well, this is the new normal. This is what we should do every year. And then you fall short. And the next thing you know, you're firing coaches and firing front office people. And I mean, that's what happens, right? Like the Kings are going to face this next season. The Kings, I don't want to say they overachieved, but the Kings are going to, I think, have a really hard time replicating what they did this season when the West is in a little bit more of a stable position next season. So anyway, with the Knicks, Yes, I think if it were me, I'm not saying literally everybody's on the table. I can't tell you that definitively. I have not poked around on this. If it were
Yeah,
me, I'd say everybody should be on the table aside from Jalen Brunson. He's the only player I would say is off limits.
yeah.
And even then, like off limits until what? Off limits. If you could get Luca, I'll trade Jalen. Like if you could get, but short of getting a top five
Realistically,
player, yeah, Jalen is the one guy you're probably hanging on to. Everybody else, I would say, is fair game. Um, you mentioned a bunch of guys who like, well, where do they go with these guys? I'm actually thinking of somebody else entirely. I think the first step is, what do we think of Julius Randle? Because the two
mm,
anchors right now are Brunson and Randle. Brunson, I have all the faith in the world, is going to keep playing at this level or higher. I have none of the faith that Julius Randle will, given the first 7 years of his career, followed by the one really good year, followed by the bad year, followed by the bounce back good year, except that was then followed by the colossal disappointment in 2 playoff rounds. Like, is Julius Randle a big game player? Can he deliver when you need it most? I know he's banged up. He had an ankle, whatever. Everybody's banged up, right? Like,
yep.
Jimmy Butler is
Fair
banged up and,
question.
missed a game in that series, and has come back and has still just been kicking everybody's asses. So I'm not. Listen. I know I've got plenty of company here because again, I live in New York. A lot of Knick fan friends.
You hear?
Yeah, like Julius Randle. I'm sure most Knicks fans would be more than happy to ship out tomorrow if they could get an upgrade. Um, so that's the thing, right? Like let's say that Jalen Brunson is going to continue on this path and will be, whether he makes All NBA or not next year, whether he makes All Star or not, he's going to be in that discussion. He's at that level. So you need a co-star, and hopefully a co-star who's even better than he is. Randall's not going to be that guy. There's nobody else on this roster who can be that guy. And so you're looking to make a deal, and you know, so there's that. I think the thing with the
Mm,
promise of the rest of that roster, right? As good as Grimes has been, as good as Quickly has been, as good as, and even some of the steps that Barrett has made along the way here. Are any of these guys actually going to make an All-Star team or multiple All-Star teams? When you ask around the league, people with Barrett, it depends on when you ask them, which year, and who
after
you're
what
asking.
game?
Yeah, what game? I mean, people kind of feel like Barrett, he might make an All-Star team at some point, maybe a
Mm,
couple, but no one is viewed outside of maybe Brunson now. I don't think anybody's viewed as a potential like perennial all-star, like an absolute
yeah, not
foundational
yet.
star player, right? Are Emmanuel Quickly and Obi Toppin even starters in this league on a good team, right? So like you're asking about like, well, Quickly's blocked. I think people I talk to around the league kind of feel like Quickly's best role is as sixth man anyway. A fill-in
Mm,
starter here and there, but
yep.
that may be just be his career.
A Terry
Top
Rozier situation.
Yeah, although Rozier's had a lot of great starting stretches of his career as well. But
Yep.
Rozier's always been a pretty explosive scorer, even from his earlier years. Um, I just there's a lot of good players, but nobody that probably charts as an eventual great player. So
Mm,
I think their entire agenda right now is keeping an eye on the league and waiting for somebody to break loose. Who's the next disenchanted superstar who tries to force a trade? And does he want to come to New York? And is the team that he's forcing a trade from, do they like what we have? That's the
yep.
question.
Most definitely. I can see that also. But there's a young player, Quentin Grimes, who started for the Knicks this year at the two guard spot. Projects to be a great defender, long term, shooting wise, upside. Do you think he's the next closest thing built to a piece to keep and build with? Although we know he's not untouchable in any blockbuster, but is he a piece you like?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially if you've got Grimes and Josh Hart together, whether they're starting next to each other. I mean, it's probably not the case as long as Barrett's around, but
Yeah.
having two really top shelf perimeter defenders who you can play together, or starting one, subbing in the other in Hart and Grimes. Like that's really important in today's NBA. Obviously, perimeter defense and guys who can guard across multiple positions is critical. And if you can also shoot the three, all the better. Kind of comes and goes for Hart, but Grimes has been pretty good. So yeah, listen. If it weren't for the fact that my main goal here would still be find a superstar, do whatever it takes to get him. Maybe not whatever it takes. You got to keep a couple of guys back because
Yeah.
that superstar needs role players around him. But yeah, I mean, I would see Grimes as a long term, foundational piece. Except that he may be one of those players because of his profile and how much promise he's already shown. Among the first things that anybody's going to ask from another team when you go asking them about, hey, are you guys ready to trade Karl Anthony Towns, or are you ready to trade Joel Embiid? I don't think the Embiid thing is happening, but whatever. The second you start those conversations, among the first names that team is going to ask for, I think, is probably Grimes.
Yeah, most definitely.
And by the way, Randle, unfortunately, is not going to be one of those. And so, like, I know a lot of the fake trades going along around this time of year are like, oh, Randle plus a bunch of the picks gets us. I don't think that's the case because the rest of the league saw the same things that you all did as Knicks fans. Julius Randle fades at inopportune times. His temperament leaves something to be desired at times. Bit moody, bit volatile. The rest of the league sees that too. So no one's going to. Yeah, no one's trading their superstar in a deal built around Julius Randle as a main piece, unless it's the only way to make salaries work.
Yeah, you're not wrong, but here's where I would make an argument on that also is, he's durable, Howard. If you want to win in the regular season, and was he miscast? The chat and Knicks fans always say Julius Randle as your second option isn't really fair to him or fair to us. But if Julius Randle is the third option, like, for example, I would say, how would you look at the Clippers if they had Kawhi, Paul George, and Randle as the third guy that Marcus Morris was supposed to be? Would you look at them differently?
I mean, maybe the thing is when we're talking about having Randle in a package for a superstar, the team that's giving up the superstar isn't looking to get a Julius Randle back. They're either looking to get back another star that they really that isn't he should actually be a third option. They're looking for another one or two first or second option, or they're looking for just get youth and picks. Just where if you're losing Joel Embiid, you're back to the drawing board anyway. So in one instance, right? If you are the Timberwolves and you've decided we're building around Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert and McDaniels and the rest of this group, do you really want a high usage Julius Randle mixed in there, or have you already decided no, we're trying to focus on these guys? We need another role guy there. We need a great defender there, or we need, you know what I mean? So it's it will depend on the team that's making this theoretical trade we're discussing. But I just don't see that Randle at this stage of his career, at his age, the contract's fine. It's not terrible, but I don't know that he's the guy that anybody's seeking to. What solution is he providing to that other team? What question is he answering? So anyway, not impossible as part of a package, but I just don't think he's like somebody that anybody's eager to go acquire, especially when they're trading their best player.
Well, yeah, among the Knicks community, they're kind of echoing what you're saying in a nutshell. It's a difficult trade to make right now. Yes, the salary is pretty good, but it's the need. Okay, which other team has that need? It's kind of like a used car salesman. You need to find, sell a car to somebody who has a need and try to take advantage of them, of that need. With that said, what do you think, like, in the chat has made mention about, what if the front office views Randle differently? Do you think they're trying to force a square peg into a round hole?
So this front office didn't sign him initially, although they gave him his extension, if I recall the timeline correctly. So I'm sure like it's not like they are overly invested in him. I don't mean monetarily and contractually, but just in terms of like belief. I have no doubt in my mind that if they saw an opportunity to move him, and I haven't asked anybody over there anytime recently, but like Randle's like a really good player, right? He's a good player, as you point out, durable, productive, and he's going to win you a lot of regular season games. All of that's fine. I think that this front office, I think it's probably fair to assume, is not overly attached to him or believing that, well,
Okay.
he's one of our foundational guys. And
Yep.
especially after a postseason like this one, right? Like,
Yeah.
and plus, the
There'll
clock
be
is always ticking,
issues.
right? They're 3 years in this administration. They're they themselves are going to want to keep pushing forward as much as Knicks fans do. Is the path to the conference finals keep this group together and just add a couple of pieces around it? Like, that's kind of hard to do. It's not, you're probably not making the next step. And if you look at who you're competing against at the top of the East, right? The Cavs are young and should only keep improving. They're gonna add to their roster, right? They didn't even have a fifth starter. They're gonna get a fifth starter presumably this offseason, and maybe they'll build a bench as a novel concept. The Celtics, I don't think are going anywhere. But granted, they could still lose this series, and who knows? Somebody decides to do the blow up. I doubt
Well,
that's happening,
yep.
but I don't think the Celtics are going anywhere. I don't think the Bucks are going anywhere, though they have some work to do. So the teams at the top that have arguably better top to bottom talent, or that have better number 1 and 2 stars, that's who you have to look at. And so Brunson plus who is going to make you better than the Celtics? Brunson plus who is going to get you past the Bucks? Brunson plus who is going to get you past the Heat, for that matter? And the Cavs. So like that, I think that's the exercise.
Yeah. No, 100%. Is there any names that you feel like could be a great fit? We're talking about Washington. KP's been talked about as the fan base. Feels like, stretch five options. Do you think Zach LaVine, some wing options? If you were running this team, Howard, which area would you try to make an upgrade, where possible?
I think Thibs already traded Zach LaVine once, didn't he, in the Jimmy Butler deal? Way back
Yeah.
when.
It's
Um,
hard to know, right? How
um,
much input he has. Also, he like with the
that's
Josh
fair
Hart,
also. Yeah. Yeah.
and Carl Anthony Towns. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I've always thought Towns was going to be the guy. One, the CAA connection. Two, he, at some point the Timberwolves, I think, are going to have to decide that they need to pick a new direction, and they've got a guy that they can build around instead. They've got Anthony Edwards.
yeah, it's easy.
I don't know. Listen, Towns is a mixed bag. Incredibly productive. I don't know that he's a real Thibs kind of player. And again, Thibs and Towns have already had their moment together. Would Thibs endorse that move? Towns is known as a little soft, and we know that Thibs is all about defense and toughness. So, but he's the
Dogs.
guy. What's that?
Yeah, dogs.
Yeah, exactly. But if he's the guy that's available, and given the CAA ties, would the front office say, like, there's our home run move? Wouldn't surprise me in the least. We don't know if Towns is going to be available yet. We don't know if Trae Young,
Yep.
he's not a Knicks fit, but we don't know if, the guys that are being speculated about right
Yeah.
now,
Dame.
Dame, Beal, Trae Young, Embiid is kind of a distant one, but it's kind of lingering out there. Towns, like, that's where most of the speculation is right now. I don't think we're missing anybody. Sometimes the guy who decides to force his way out or becomes available is somebody that you couldn't have anticipated at this time of year. Maybe somebody else does shake loose. Maybe somebody picks a new direction. And also, listen, up until or as of this moment, still no reason to believe that Dame is going to be available. So that
Yeah,
that seems still static. The Wizards
still
are
waiting.
interesting because they did finally hire a new head of everything of their entire group.
Yeah.
So Michael Winger coming over from the Clippers, really smart guy. I think a great hire. But Winger is not going to be the president and GM of the Wizards. He's president of Monumental Sports. So he's overseeing the Wizards and the Mystics and their and the G League team, the Go-Go. So he's going to hire basketball people. But every indication is that Winger is going to get the authority that his predecessors lacked to just reimagine the whole thing, blow it up if he has to.
Yeah.
I don't know how tradable Beal is at this stage, given that contract and given his injury
Oh.
history. I don't even know if that's a plus asset. He might be a negative asset for trade purposes, as talented as he is. But if the Wizards are going to blow it up, Kuzma's going to be a free agent, so that's a different situation. He's, he could just walk somewhere or go somewhere in a sign and trade. But Porzingis could opt out, could stay in. He could be traded. Beal theoretically could be traded. Like, that's the team I would keep an eye on, broadly, not for Knicks purposes, but broadly. They're the team that seems like, if you're going to ask me who's the most likely to take a sledgehammer to the roster this summer,
Or the Raps.
they're overdue. The Raptors.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, they had opportunities at the trade deadline to do something, and they decided not to. They went and got Jakob Poeltl as a means of doubling down on the current group. So the hints are all that they are not looking to blow it up, but they do have some key decisions to make, especially with Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent Jr. Again, not guys who fit what the Knicks are doing now. Although I really thought the Knicks should have tried to go all out to get VanVleet several years ago, and they got a version of him in Jalen Brunson anyway now. So, but yeah, if the Raptors went that direction, and if like an Anunoby or Siakam becomes available, sure, like those are great targets. I don't know that they're going to be available. I don't know what the price would be. You know, we take our best guess at these things sometimes, like, oh, what would it take to get? You don't know until the guy's actually on the market, because that's what the market is about, right? Well, oh, this guy's worth 3 first-round picks right up until the moment that another team says, no, we're going to give you 4. Well, did we think he was worth 4? No, but somebody just offered 4. So now he's worth 4. So we make our best guess. And when I say we, media, other executives who people like me are talking to, you get your best guess about what a guy's market value is and what could you get for this guy. You don't know until the moment actually arrives that you're having these negotiations and how many teams get involved and what they're willing to put on the table.
Exactly. With the Cleveland swooping in for Donovan Mitchell, who that's still an option.
Prime example.
I could see that still the homecoming with Cat. We await with bated breath.
Yeah. I didn't think it was a bad thing necessarily that the Knicks missed out on Donovan Mitchell. Only because he's a really great player, but one, I wasn't sure of the fit with Jalen Brunson. 2, I just think that like he's a second tier type star. He's not that level of star that he single-handedly puts you in contention. And Donovan Mitchell plus this Knicks roster, I don't know was going to be much better than what they had. And look, the Cavs on paper had more talent than the Knicks on some level, right? Or at least more proven talent, you could say. The Knicks beat them. And Donovan Mitchell was terrible in the series. So I didn't think that I didn't view that as some big missed opportunity. If they hadn't gotten Brunson, I would have looked at it a little differently.
Yeah, also, I think they just hit that home run with Brunson and they don't really need to worry so much.
At that position,
Brunson,
yeah.
Do you view Brunson as a top 10 point guard in the league now?
Probably, without looking at it on paper and without I would have to actually pull up the list and say, all right, how many guys am I putting?
Disrespectful, yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to overlook somebody. So without having actually done the list, I don't want to say it definitively, but he was on my list of guards to consider for All NBA when I'm filling out the All NBA ballot. So by definition, he was at least in contention to be one of the top 6, and I think that list was probably 12 deep. So top 10, top 12, whatever. And he might be higher. Again, I'd have to sit down and some of this is tricky too because it's like, well, where do we put Chris Paul at this stage? And are we talking about top 10 for literally just this minute right now or this past season or going forward? Because going forward, it's easy to drop Chris Paul off as we see him going into decline. But this past season, Chris Paul was still a pretty valuable point guard. So there's some guys who are harder to assess too. How do we assess LaMelo Ball after all the time that he's missed? But I would say this, Brunson has clearly shown that he's a winner. And so even when we start doing things like we say, all right, who's got the better talent? And we start looking at things like, your shooting ability, your handle, your defensive ability, your all these other things. Some guys are just winners, right? Like Jalen Brunson was a 2nd-round pick because he didn't leap off the page with all the usual traditional tools that scouts are looking for. But the dude's just a freaking winner, and he works his butt off, and he cares, and it's all the other stuff, right? It's all the intangibles that you don't know until a guy's in the league for a couple of years where you go like, oh, guess we should have drafted that guy higher. Or, oh, the entire league missed on Nikola Jokic. Or, oh, look at all the undrafted guys on the Heat that literally the entire league missed on twice because they went undrafted. And it's not until later that you can see the distinction between guys who have quote unquote talent, the leap off the page stuff, the stuff that goes into scouting reports, the stuff that comes out of the combine, the stuff that you can measure versus the stuff that you can't measure, which is work ethic and commitment and love of the game. All these things that actually end up being a lot more important than people realize.
You could basically have just described Jimmy Butler, without mentioning any player.
30th overall pick in his draft, I believe. Yes.
Yeah, I think those two. And my fear is Tom Thibodeau just loves Brunson so much. If we don't get him help, he's going to be up for another 42 minutes per game per night next
Yeah,
season.
there is
But
always
yeah,
that danger.
I always love your insight, and yeah, we always appreciate you coming on, Howard. Um, Everyone can find you at Howard Beck on Twitter. You're covering the NBA for GQ Sports. You wrote an amazing piece on, you're only as good as your bench, in terms of your depth, which rang to be true. Absolutely. Is there anything else you would like to mention?
Sure, yeah, appreciate that. So yeah, covering the league for the time being for GQ Sports and the Locked On Podcast Network, working my way around their
Mm,
network. All my stuff is also on my Authory page. That's the word author with a Y on the end. So authory.com/Howard Beck. Everything I write for GQ, everything that I previously wrote for Sports Illustrated, Bleacher Report, New York Times is all there as well. So encourage people to go check out my work and follow me there. You can actually even register for a newsletter that will give you an email update every time I have anything new that
mm.
publishes. So appreciate that, and thanks for having me. This was fun.
No, pleasure. Yeah, and let's chat soon.
Absolutely.
T- Take care.
You too.
Ladies and gentlemen, Howard Beck, the one, the only, covered the Knicks for the New York Times and the Nets back in the mellow days. We could have talked for hours, but yeah, there's so much to cover, as we know, with the Knicks, and this off-season buzz is just crazy. There is no off-season. What off-season? Basically, we got our chat buzzing out, podcasts, putting out amazing content out here, so many conversations and angles, to look at this. So I appreciate everyone's questions and thoughts. If we didn't get to it, apologies. But yeah, we're going to continue streaming. So yeah, throw out any questions, any topics you would like to touch on. But yeah, Howard's in New York. Obviously, got connections, got friends that are Knicks fans, friends in the organization. So there's so many different angles. Obviously, I did take, he did want to, talk about the Julius Randle thing, which was good to hear from an outsider perspective on a potential Julius Randle trade value. Um, we always have a certain, opinion of our own players, but it's always about what do the other teams around the league, view your players, your assets at, you know, the same way Chicago Bulls fans may be lamenting a Zach LaVine, or a Minnesota Timberwolves fans might be lamenting a Karl Anthony Towns and their shortcomings. But on the other side, it looks like a shiny toy, you know, to other teams' fans. We got Knicks fans trying to forgive Kristaps Porzingis and welcome him back, you know. But there might be Washington fans thinking like, you can have him. We want someone durable. So um, yeah, there's a lot happening, man. D's World, salute, appreciate you. Everyone check out D's World, doing great work on the Knicks content. What's a top priority for you this off season, and what names would come with that? Uh, there's a lot, I think, fam. I think I love the two-way players, and I don't necessarily feel like we need to hit, a Karl Anthony Towns kind of home run, a Jalen Brown home run, um, maybe a tier below. Like I'm looking at the Raptors and the Wizards. Like I like OG. I like Pascal Siakam kind of fit guys that can play offense and defense, have size, athleticism, and I think Tom Thibodeau, quite frankly, likes those kind of guys also. I know Tom Thibodeau gets a certain rap, for liking certain guys, but he just loves a baller. He loves a baller that plays hard. Um, a stretch five situation. I know Brook Lopez is old, but the fact that Brook Lopez can block shots, can stretch the floor a bit. I mean, maybe we don't go that far because they love Mitch so much. Maybe they just want to make sure they can back up Mitch for 20 minutes, for 15 minutes with somebody who can provide some offense. I think that's something Leon and Tibbs have got to be seriously looking at. Just add more roster versatility. Um, One great point Mark Berman said, and which we all think, and basically the Knicks have three centers that all do the same thing. or to a lesser degree, Sims and Hartenstein with defense, but they all provide the kind of same level of offense in a way. I know Hartenstein wasn't, utilized as well as he should have been with assists and playmaking, but that's something Leon Rose got to address. More versatility. Um, I like the Josh Hart move. I'm just kind of more apprehensive about it long term, with the shooting and what else we need, how else we can fit. I really, really hope, if there's one thing I hope we can improve internally, and I think it's going to be RJ Barrett's shooting. That that's going to change the fortunes of this franchise more than any other player on this current roster in terms of growing another skill set. Um, we kind of know what Julius Randle is going to be. I don't think he can come back next season a drastically different kind of player. I think Jalen Brunson, we know what to expect. But if RJ Barrett can come back, he did alter his shot mechanics in the playoffs, and that seemed to work a little bit. If he works on the shooting a lot throughout the offseason with Drew Hanlon, RJ comes back with a good stroke, and can shoot 38%, shoot efficiently. I think that's the kind of internal improvement that can take this team to another level, as well as adding, supplementary role players and bench shooting and scoring. Um, as I mentioned last night with John, I think Obi Toppin has got to be a move you've got to consider if Randle's staying. If Randle's not staying, then definitely, keep Obi around on that final rookie year contract. But if Randle is staying, you've got to make it a priority to try to get some shooting for Obi Toppin. Now that could be in the draft, or that could be in the trade deadline, or in the off season. But what are your thoughts on that, man? Yeah, appreciate you all. Dirty says Embiid. He's on the Embiid train. Ingram and OG. Yep. I would love an Embiid also. I think the injury concerns are the low hanging fruit situation with that. But anytime you could try to get an MVP, I mean, Knick fans, we can't become fussy at this point. But obviously, it's going to take a huge boatload of picks and all of those things, and to Philly trade Embiid in the division, that's going to be a big question also. But Ingram signed me up. OG signed me up. Also, good ones. D Cool salute. Yeah, Isaiah Hartenstein is a guy who could be used as a piece in a trade. He's certainly got reasonable value around the league in terms of a role player and a bench player that maybe other teams feel like they could utilize him better. What's good, Darren? Yeah, 100%. Portland's another team to look out for. Like Howard hit on, I think it's going to be the Wizards with their new executive president, Messiah in Toronto. It's going to be the Chicago Bulls with a lot of core in flux, with Vucevic a free agent, and of course Portland, like you hit on as well. That third pick is available. Look, I think every year Dame Lillard flirts with the fans and the media on Twitter, but I don't think he's serious about being traded. I think Dame Lillard would have already been traded already. I think he wants to retire a Portland Trailblazer now. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Kuz. I think I'm leaning towards a 70% chance he's gone, 30% chance he stays. I guess money talks. I assume Washington can offer him the most, but I think he wants a bigger market. There's Kuz also. Again, I bring up the point about RJ. I don't know if the front office is really looking at Kuz that closely, considering what they saw with RJ in the playoffs. But I would like Kuzma's size. He can play the 4 and the 3. People think he's actually more of a 4 now also. Yeah, Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, Oubre, one of the 3. I wouldn't mind Oubre coming off the bench, Mikal Bridges, and of course Cam Johnson. Cam Johnson off the bench, Mikal starting, but Brooklyn look like they're gonna flirt with everybody until they never trade him. They're going to see how many picks they can get. There's going to be a team offer 4 first-round picks for a Mikal Bridges, which is kind of crazy to think how far the league has come on the 3-and-D kind of guy. I mean, the quintessential 3-and-D guy, Mikal Bridges, the guy who the Knicks passed over for Kevin Knox, looking for upside. Little did we know the dude who had the low floor actually had pretty high upside. In the end, we tried to swing for Kevin Knox, and we know the rest is history, man. I think Steve Mills and David Fizdale. You can send your fan mail to those guys. Um, yeah, Cam, Jerry Salute. Yep, Grimes needs more touches. Yep, that's something I'm looking at internal development improvement next year. Um, we need to approach this off season from all angles. We got a lot of fans that want us to talk about what if the team just stays pat, and we got a lot of fans that, of course, want to see us kill the trade machine and see what we can conjure up. But Quentin Grimes is going to be a big piece. The front office loves him. He's most likely going to be stay in New York Knicks, and he needs more touches. I think he will. I think injuries. It was an up and down kind of season for Q Dot with the injuries, the late start. Remember, they did start Evan Fournier as the starting guard before Quentin Grimes got that chance. Yeah, like D says, is also backup center. It seems like that's been the case for a long time. I love Sims, the rebounding. I love what Hartenstein showed, but we kind of got the same guy in different version of the same guy in 3 different bodies. Darren says people saying we need a permanent center, but we still haven't seen Sims' potential much. I think Tom Thibodeau likes Jericho Sims, but I think we're a far way off yet him being, relied upon in a much bigger role. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he could ready to be step up and be that bench permanent backup as well. And again, I think Isaiah Hartenstein will have some value around the league. Let's say we're trying to pull off a huge deal for a Siakam or an OG or a Zach LaVine. I could see an Isaiah Hartenstein going out in that deal because the contract's pretty good, $8 million. He's proven to be one of the best backup centers in the NBA, and I think other teams have taken notice of that. The Knicks don't achieve the 5th seed without other executives closely looking at the Knicks pieces. I think Mitchell Robinson has elevated his trade value a lot, and Emmanuel Quickley also, being a dude who might be ready to start. And if you can extend him for 20 mil, 18 mil, 22 mil for an NBA starter on a rebuilding team that's not quite ready to contend yet, that could be a sexy proposition, for a team that's not ready to pay a dude 30 mil yet. Quickley still has upside. I'm not ready to label Emmanuel Quickley as just a bench spark plug 6-man yet. I think he's smart enough. He's got good archetype. He's broad-shouldered. He's a good defender on ball. The shot is there. He just needs to improve on the playmaking. I could see Emmanuel Quickley being ready to start for a winning team by the time he's 25 years old. Maybe just a couple of years of starting seasoning can get him right. Yeah, I think Hartenstein came in with some misconception. He only shot the 3 ball well with the Clippers, but based on it was a low sample size. It was like 1.5 attempts or something. So the shot wasn't falling. So he just didn't jack it up anymore with the Knicks. But yeah, Isaiah's got a lot of skill set that could be utilized that Tom Thibodeau, hasn't utilized. But to his credit, he stepped up his game defensively, the rebounding, the toughness, the hustle ended up improving. I think Isaiah was dealing with an injury early on in the season. A lot of fans were getting on him, but he ended up getting himself right. But yeah, I kind of feel like Jericho Sims could be set for a breakout year. He's made improvement. Let's be real. Jericho Sims has looked better every year. There's no there's no offensive move. He's just another rim runner, kind of a rim protector, rebounder, kind of help defender kind of guy. Um, Arguably, Jericho's biggest skill set for me is the ability to switch out on the perimeter and D up a guard. He can kind of stay in front of wings and guards. You know, for a big man, which is very very valuable in this league as well. If he can really focus and hone in on that skill set, he'll be a beast defensively. Being able to switch, kind of like a a baby Bam Adebayo kind of situation with that. Maybe that's a guy he needs to mold his game with. He's got more athleticism than Bam, um, also, but always trying to keep this thing positive, glass half full. By the Knicks making the playoffs, it gave us more chance to evaluate our guys, evaluate our talent. Some guys stepped up in the playoffs, some guys didn't step up, but we can take this now, and the front office no doubt will, and see which guys are built to continue with this New York Knicks journey and see who can stay around. I think the front office would definitely be open to exploring any deal for a Julius Randle, a Mitch, possibly even Barrett. But it comes down to how much do the other teams value him? What's the market like? It was very interesting to hear what Howard had to say about, how the league may perceive Julius Randle. They were watching the playoffs also. But, I think there's going to be value. I don't think his playoffs killed all value or anything like that. I know the ankle did look like it was something that, was significantly hampering Julius Randle, aside from the lackadaisical defensive effort. That's kind of always been there. That's attached to Julius Randle, but his mobility was definitely hindered in the playoffs. I think if Julius Randle was more mobile in the playoffs and a better offensive version of himself, we win the Heat series. I know he didn't hit shots, all of that, but there's no way you could tell me Julius Randle was moving the same way he was moving in the regular season. He was showing that he could seriously D up and do some stuff on defensive side of the thing. In Denver, he had a great defensive game, D'ing up Jokic and doing all those kinds of things. In the playoffs, we just didn't see that from Julius. I know he missed like the last 3 weeks. He rushed back to play against Cleveland in game 1, helped us win game 1. That I'll never forget. Julius Randle did put himself out there for critique. You do that when you play with an injury. To his credit, he never used that as an excuse. But having said that, we know how ruthless this industry is. If you take the hardwood, you're welcome to critique. And Julius Randle did not have a good playoffs. Offensively, it hurt his stock. Now, the front office still, I think, would be okay keeping Randle. I think they still believe in him as a piece. If and this gets into the bigger prediction in terms of what's going to happen. I don't think if there's any home run that this front office likes, I don't think they're going to do it. I think they're going to try to make some incremental improvement. Try to bring in some shooting, use that mid-level exception, bank on bringing back Josh Hart for the 17, 18 mil that's reported. And I think you bring in the season with a new RJ, new version, a better version of Quentin Grimes, a Josh Hart that you didn't have to begin the last season with Evan Fournier and Derrick Rose maybe gone. An improved Mitchell Robinson, a playoff experienced Brunson and Randle. And I think I could see this front office coming back with the same core, but with better versatile bench talent. That's one thing I could see if the home run is not there. But I think their goal is to try to find that home run first. I don't think their preference is to run it back. I think they're definitely trying to look for that upgrade right now. And the time is right now. There's no better time. But yeah, I think it's fair to think that way with Josh Hart, 18 mil. He comes in what was our record? It was like one of the best records in the NBA to close the season with Josh Hart. Now coming in to begin next season, it's fair to say you could pencil in the Knicks for 50 wins, right? That should be the target. Fourth seed again, third seed, fourth seed, home court, and let's go from there. Let's see. You always got the trade deadline also, but one move I would definitely be keeping my eye on is for Obi Toppin and the NBA draft that's coming up. We'll be doing a lot more draft content and talking about it. You guys let me know any prospects in the late first round that catch your eye. Kaiser's in the building, salute. 17 to 18 milli for Hart is crazy. Better be 3 years with that team option on the final year. Yeah, I agree. Not that I don't think he's earned it. I think he's earned that contract. It just is a crazy number. But he helped the team win. Yeah, he's a great defensive guy, like Howard said. He D's up. He rebounds better than power forwards and centers. He'll help us win in the regular season. In the playoffs, it gets a bit dicey. But I agree with that fourth year. It better be a team option. Even if it's a player option, we'll be fine because he's probably going to opt out of that player option anyway, fam, to get another payday. So team option or player option's fine. I think he's definitely going to bet on himself. Philip, what's good? Do you think Rokas comes over? He's a decent 3-point shooter, and we lose D Rose. Needed some depth pieces after Brunson and McBride. Yep, great point. 100%. Sign me up. I think now's the right time. He's got a couple years seasoning in Europe, playing with one of the biggest clubs. Big EuroLeague battle-tested kind of tough playoff environment. I haven't peeped his performances recently, but he's been growing. He's been improving. The 3-point shot's decent. He's a above average pick and roll kind of defender. Exactly what we need for a bench. A backup PG. Yep, sign me up as well. Maybe we can agree to a friendly number as well for one of the minor exceptions. For 5 to 6 milli. There's some other dudes on screen. I would like to look at Seth Curry, some shooting off the bench. Maybe I'm a bit biased, but I wouldn't mind taking a look at Patty Mills to provide some veteran, savviness, some shooting. Also, he can run some action off the bench also. Paul's not on board with paying Hart that kind of money. Kaiser's not high on Rokas coming yet, as Thibs is still here as well. I think they might be looking at Deuce McBride more closely as that dude that they have in house. I know Tom loves Deuce McBride. Also, Amani Bates looks like he's gonna get a lot of workouts as well. Yeah, a lot of workouts from teams. Try to see if he can find a good fit. A number for Dirty is 18 for 3 or 16 for 4. Hope he chooses the years over the annual. Yep. Let's see, I think it'd be great if he gives the Knicks a discount. Let's say if it's 15 for 4 or something like that. But it's an inflated contract, a descending contract. Maybe more money up front. The thing about Josh Hart is he's so versatile, and every NBA roster, like CT always says, I need versatility. Guy that can play the 4, he can play the 3, he can play the 2. It helps you shuffle other pieces around. The moment you have dudes that are just locked into one position, it doesn't provide you much flexibility. Like an Obi, they don't want to use him as a small ball 5. Julius Randle, he rarely uses him as a small ball 5. Those guys are kind of locked into the 4, and it's tough. You got Kuzma that can play the 3, the 4, Pascal 3 and the 4, OG 3 and the 4. I would like them to use RJ Barrett more at the 4 as well, off the bench as well. I think that would help his defensive numbers as well. So, that's why I like Josh Hart as well. That's why he's so valuable. Versatility. He can even run some action on the one, brings the ball up, gets us easy, cheap points, pushing the break, all of those things. So, yeah, I'm not sneezing at Josh Hart. I just think the shooting is what kills us. But I would love to see him play make also a lot more too. Yeah, DiVincenzo for the mid-level. Let's look at that. You know what we're going to see, Dirty. Also, we're going to see how attractive the Knicks are. Most teams have the mid-level to dangle, but which serious players are going to look at the Knicks now like, oh, I can actually help them contend. If it's 16 milli with or whatever the mid-level is, 15 milli. If it's with this team, sorry, it's 12 milli. Yeah, if it's 12 milli with this Western Conference team that's been in the playoffs, or it's 12 milli with the Knicks, let's see which serious talent considers the Knicks now. Because all money aside, the Knicks are attractive now in terms of making it to the second round and proving that they can be a player in this thing. Darren says Adama. I'm not familiar with some of these guys' games, but no doubt I'll be studying the film. But yeah, keep the buzz coming. Yeah, Nova family with that situation. The Knicks building a culture, whether it's Nova, whether it's Knicks, Kentucky. We are a place that we look after our players. I think that's something that should not be lost. You know, the way Thibs and the way this organization has treated Julius Randle, the way we've treated Jalen Brunson, those kinds of things. You hope other players are paying attention, because I don't know any other franchise that would be treating Julius Randle as a second option the way we have. You know, you could not be a fan of that for any different reason, but I think as a player in this league, you kind of got to look at the Knicks like, hey, they look after their guys, they look after them, they pay them. Josh Hart, Thibs, eventually the next guy that's going to want to be part of this thing is going to look at it like, these guys will take care of me, all of those kinds of things. But, talking on the draft, I think the Knicks have a clear shooting need, maybe a backup. If we can sign an undrafted center who maybe is a stretch 5, stretch 4, maybe got a lot of raw potential, a guy who's been overlooked. There's been heaps of dudes, being overlooked. Your Max Strausses, Gabe Vincent's, your Najis, these kinds of dudes that were overlooked. George's Niang, a lot of these players that come into the league like, whoa, where did this guy come from? I think that's what the Knicks should be doing. They should be in that kind of business now. One disappointment I had was the situation we signed Jean Montero, an undrafted Dominican point guard who's lighting it up in Europe right now. He came in with first round kind of talent and slipped out of the draft. And the Knicks signed him, but guess what? We couldn't negotiate a buyout with the European club, and we ended up missing out. Now, Jean Montero is a free agent again, or is with a European club. But those are the kind of situations that the Knicks were locked in on, and they hit, but they just ended up fumbling that situation with Montero. But with this year, all the talk we're hearing is that a lot of talented players are going to choose, or late in the second round, they're going to choose to go undrafted so that they can, maybe choose their destination. And I'm looking for the Knicks to snap up some guys. And that's if we don't, end up with a draft pick coming up. I think we're going to try to get into the back of the first round. We talked about Indiana, pick 26 and pick 29. I think the Knicks should be looking at trying to acquire some of those picks. You can always buy a second round pick too. We know that. So, yeah, I think the Knicks will definitely bring in some talent. Derrick Rose, Evan Fournier is probably coming off the roster. Maybe we end up putting together a larger package, consisting of Isaiah Hartenstein, Obi, IQ might get traded. We might be needing a lot more bench depth. with some young pieces. Of course, we got the Trevor Keels and Daquan Jeffries, the two-way situations also that the Knicks haven't shown that they can bring someone into the big club yet and develop. And the Rokas situation also, man. But yeah, Rokas is savvy. Those European dudes, man, they come in to the league with some smarts on how to play the game. Distributing, pick and roll action, all of those things. He's crafty. Yeah, uh, no polarizing dude than Julius Randle right now. He's miscast, man, in this situation. I think Randle in the regular season can put up, good numbers, shoot the three ball pretty well because a lot of teams, guess what? They don't lock in, they don't D up as much as they do in the playoffs as well. So that and the way Julius Randle plays hard, credit to him, he's a bully who focuses, plays physical, and dominates the regular season, man. But in the playoffs, it's a different story. It's something I didn't quite come to grips with. I didn't really want to buy into that. Mark Berman, a friend of the show, has always been telling us that, you know, Tom Thibodeau teams play at a certain high level in the regular season, but when it gets to the playoffs, they don't have that next level jump that other teams do. We've seen it with the Heat now. They play regular season ball at a certain level. They're okay with that. When it gets to the playoffs, they have another level that they can lock in on. Unfortunately, the Knicks do not have another level. Um, their regular season level is their playoff level. It's go 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 on fourth gear constantly. Yeah, what's good dirty? Hawkeyeing the late first round talent as well. Posmensky, Hood, Shafino, Rupert, yeah, and Kulabay. Yeah, definitely, man. Hopefully a Sissoko or a CD Sissoko or someone can drop. Also, we've seen some crazy things. Remember, the draft is in the eye of the beholder. We saw what's his name, Primo, the San Antonio Spurs reach on Josh Primo, and we've seen OKC reach on Josh Giddey, which turned out to not be a reach. So, and then on the flip side, we saw Quentin Grimes, go so late. Emmanuel quickly go so late. Essentially, those were top 10 talents as well. So your teams can get it wrong. They can reach too much, or they can miss out on a guy who's really, really, really good, um, really good. But I guess again, going back to what we know this team needs, the positive thing is in the playoffs, we got to see that we need good shooting, we need some defensive versatility. Guys who can guard the 1, 2, 3, and the 4. Guys that can switch, really switchable guys like Josh Hart. Um, I don't know. You guys tell me. What else do we need? A backup point guard that can distribute, uh, set up an offense, and maybe an athletic wing. Um, I really, really had high hopes for Obi. I just don't think he's a tweener. Is Obi's issue? If Obi was 6'7" and with his athleticism was solid defensively, he'd be our 3. If Obi was 6'10", he'd be our backup center, or there'd be more fit for him. But Obi's archetype, it's just you could say he's kind of soft in terms of rebounding, and defensively. That's the issue that Tom Thibodeau sees. I think there are parts of Obi that Tom Thibodeau likes. I think athleticism wise, ability to push the floor, run the break, finish in traffic. The athlete that Obi is sensational. The fit in the NBA in terms of just fundamentals and toughness and intangibles, all those things is something that is just something missing with Obi right now. But ultimately, he's just not the best fit for the New York Knicks at this point. He would fit better on the Raptors. He would fit better on the Pacers. um, Oklahoma, the Rockets, even Detroit. Um, we might even entertain something with Detroit. What do they have? They have Isaiah Stewart. They got Bogdanovich, our old friend Alec Burks, um, some draft capital. Who knows? Maybe a team like Detroit that's looking to bank on young upside. That can continue to recycle. Being back in the lottery as well is something to look at. Um, but certainly wouldn't be mad if we kept Obi as well. Who knows what happens with Julius Randle? Yeah, D cool salute. I like these guys. Brandon Miller, Chris Murray. Although it does look like Brandon Miller is going to go high, man. It's going to be interesting. I don't think Scoot Henderson really capitalized on his platform. I think this season as well. Yeah, Dirty says defensive wings on our radar. We need that. Just add the best player since guys will be traded soon enough. Well, you tell me who's the highest, likeliness of being traded. Who do you feel? Um, I really feel like this front office still values Julius Randle a lot. Um, maybe they know that they're going to get a number one option, or that their goal is to get a number two option and push Julius Randle down the pecking order. You know, we don't know what they're thinking. That's the issue. Everyone want to say, let's just get rid of Randle. Maybe the front office has a grand plan to limit Julius Randle's role and acknowledge that he's on a $20 million contract, which is very, very cheap in this current NBA. Also, it's tough to gauge his trade value right now, and what team's really gonna, be clamoring for Juju as well. Um, yeah, D Cool says I think JR might be gone. It's just gonna come down to who values him the most. But quite frankly, he does have value in my opinion. It's just going to be a niche kind of team. It's not going to be 20 teams we can banty about for Julius Randle. It's going to be a set 3, 4 kind of teams that are kind of on the fringe. Let's be real. No rebuilding team wants Julius Randle right now. It's going to be on that team that's maybe on the cusp. You know, maybe a team like the New Orleans Pels. A team who's familiar with Julius Randle and maybe is ruining the day they lost him. You know, we don't know. Maybe a team like the Pelicans that's on that cusp. Ready. Maybe they know Zion. Maybe they know they can't rely on Zion so much. And looking at Juju is that iron horse who can play 82. Uh, yeah, talking about Detroit, Dirty says willing to give Detroit the second round pick back for a guy like Burks. Yeah, 100%. Let's look out for Jacob Toppin also. Yeah, let's see. Best of luck to the young man and the Toppin family as well. It'd be great to have two brothers in the league. Um, what's good, Phil? My guys in free agency, if we don't make a move, we need to prioritize the wings. I wouldn't mind also Burks. Very, very popular guy right now. And bring in a guy like Torrey Craig. Yep. Great point. 100%. Yeah, Burks is familiar with the system. Thibs loves him. We know he run him into the ground as the PG. Burks is a free agent or as a team option. Um, anytime you're talking about Detroit or those kind of teams that are blowing it up every year, those pieces are very, very gettable and very, very easy to do trades with because they're not sweating on no expectations or no timeline. Also, Scott Perry has organization connections with Detroit. We've done deals before with D Rose, and all of that. Also, Minnesota. I'd love to get me Jaden McDaniels, but I know that's not likely. But a Nas Reed, the cat deal. Look for the connections with Rosas and Thibs with the Minnesota front office. Now teams like Toronto, the Chicago Bulls, that's more tricky. I don't think our front offices, their front offices see eye to eye. I'm just keeping it real from what my perspective is. I don't see the Knicks. There are certain teams that we just don't seem to make good trades together, or like Dallas and the Knicks, for instance. Always willing to do business. Detroit and the Knicks, OKC and the Knicks, kind of thing. But there's some bad blood with the Toronto Raptors and the Knicks doing deals. A lot of deals have not gone well. Masai Ujiri, not good to deal with, not easy to deal with. Danny Ainge, not easy to deal with. Chicago Bulls, not easy to deal with. Very, very stingy front office. Um, all of that. D Cool says, I just hope Knicks aren't going back down that Levine hole. Yeah, we don't know how much smoke there was to that. One thing's for sure, if we do get Levine, Thibs signed off on that. I don't know if Thibs is going to sign off, but if that does happen, he will sign off, I think. But I'm betting on RJ's upside, and his money. You're seriously talking about a dude owning 50 mil, Levine, who has health questions. You're looking at an RJ Barrett on 20 something mil, who's growing and has upside as well. That could be the difference between us adding another max player or not. In another area, or a huge amount of role guys, as well. As we had Howard Beck on the show earlier, who writes great work for GQ Sports. PP's latest article is titled "You're Only as Good as Your Bench. Beware of the Big Trade." That was an amazing piece from Howard Beck. I urge you to check that out. I'll put the link in the comments. But we saw dudes like Phoenix, right? They got KD, but where was their depth? They had no depth in the playoffs. No, they were trying to put it together on the fly as well. One of the reasons the Knicks were so good, even though our starting five wasn't so good, was because of our bench depth. Uh, every game I was looking at the Toronto Raptors starting five, and I was like, man, this is talented. Why are the Raptors not better than what they were? Because they didn't have great bench depth either. So that everyone wanted to look at the starting five and the big splash, but you also need bench depth as well, and that's what the Knicks had. Salute to Leon. Some of these signings were excellent. Isaiah Hartenstein, great signing, great fit. Deuce McBride, great value in the second round, rotation player in the second round. Emmanuel Quickly, you hit home run on that, top 10 talent in that draft, for pick 2025. Mitchell Robinson, you plucked him from the 36th selection. So, a lot of our success has been built on hitting home runs and taking gambles that paid off. Dirty says the truth is we don't have roster spots for all these picks, so may as well add vets who actually will play. There's no doubt which direction we're headed now, and yeah, that's veterans. We need guys that can play, but that's because we have good young players that are in the rotation also. So yeah, that gives you that option. With Mitch being young still, RJ and Grimes still young. And I still classify Jalen Brunson as young. 26 is incredibly young. Let's keep it real. Jalen Brunson has not reached his prime in the NBA yet. We could take a poll, but I don't think 26 is in your prime yet. It's just short of that. Now, does his play maybe never elevate any further? Who knows? But in terms of playing age, 26 is still young. Also, Brunson fights defensively, but I don't want to, put him in a position where he's going to pick up injuries and things like that. So, playing Brunson 33 minutes, 34 minutes is my priority, next season. Whether you run RJ some action on the ball, more in the second unit, Emmanuel quickly playing more, Rocas to do someone, Josh Hart, somebody, a backup point guard. has to run more action, you know, next year off the bench as well. I want to keep Jalen Brunson healthy. I want to keep him fresh for the postseason. Well, because now we know we're kind of going into a season now, next season, with a different mindset. It's not, we might be playing in, we might be playoffs. No, it's the New York Knicks are a playoff team now. Let's let's set ourselves up and be ready for that postseason run as well. Like the Heat have proven, it don't matter if you win 42 games, 45, 48, 51. Your goal is to just make the postseason and be ready and ready to go to that next level. Um, Dirty says before RJ played solid, the playoffs. Yep, look at Levine, made more sense, but not now. Yep, 100%. The defense, the ability to stay healthy, durability is the biggest issue for me for the Levine. I know he's a big shot maker. It's just the 4 year commitment. And people have their different takes on this, but I would prefer a short term flyer on DeMar DeRozan over Zach LaVine. I know LaVine provides more 3-point shooting, ability to put up 60, but I also like DeMar DeRozan, his ability to slash, make clutch shots, be ready when the moment is big, um, you know, mid range, all of those things. And DeMar DeRozan only has 1 or 2 more years left on his deal, which means you can basically reset faster as well. So that's my reason why I would take a shorter term deal with DeRozan. Um, yeah, all things considered, yeah, RJ at his number, Levine at his number as well. Yep. Like I said, RJ's versatility, he can play on ball as well. I think he has defensive upside. I think we did see RJ Barrett's worst worst defensive season in the league so far, which is an anomaly, I think, for me, because I do feel like RJ Barrett has the tools to be a solid, at least an average defender. Um, yeah, Kaiser hit on this one also. Yep. This is big. This is big to consider. I can't imagine a world where Levine, Brunson, and Randle are sharing the rock. Great point. There's only one rock, man. You said it. That's why Josh Hart fits in so well, doesn't need the ball. Quentin Grimes fits in so well. Also, now, not many of you guys have mentioned fives. Tell me your thoughts on Mitchell Robinson. What do we do at the 5 spot? You guys tell me. It's always the wing, it's the power forward. But if we can add offense, even if it's just backing up Mitch at the 5, just a guy who could pour in 10 points, 15 points in his sleep. I know those guys don't grow on trees, but there's got to be somebody who can defend the rim and provide some offense, and also stretch the floor a little for that. Maybe we look at it in the draft, but maybe Jericho Sims comes back with a jumper, but we need offense at the 5, man. I like I think DeAndre Ayton. Let's talk about him a little bit because I think he's very, very, very available. Um, Ayton is a talent. So that's all good. We back. Yeah, keep the questions, keep the buzz coming as well. Friday night, let's go. New York Knicks off-season talk. How's everyone's week been? Great conversations. Salute to the chat. Best chat in the biz. Yeah, back on the Indiana situation with the draft. I doubt Indy and Charlotte will garnish all those picks. It's impossible. Great point. D cool. Yeah, RJ stays healthy. Yet Levine not so much. Yeah. Age also. It just depends on what the front office is thinking, man, in terms of how close they think we are. Because let's not underestimate the fact that the Knicks were 2 games away from the Eastern Conference Finals. And, you know, all the flaws aside from Levine, sometimes these moves, you just got to make that swing also. So it's going to be very, very fascinating. It's going to be the biggest offseason of Leon Rose's tenure, possibly the biggest offseason in the New York Knicks franchise over the last 25 years. It's going to be huge. I know the more major moves happen in the offseason. We know the Knicks haven't done much in the trade deadline as much outside of the Harts and the D Rose, marginal moves. But the off season is when it happens, man. The combine, people were meeting and greeting. Teams aren't happy with their progress. The Bulls, the Raptors, the T Wolves, Philly. What do you guys think of that? James Harden looks like he's out of there. Um, but yeah, talking about Ayton again, just finishing up on that point before I cut out. Ayton, I don't think he was fully invested in that Phoenix situation. When they didn't offer him the bag a year ago, he checked out. Last year was just the worst version of Ayton, I think. So you put him in a situation where he gets more touches, he thrives. He might be more invested. So that Ayton could be a classic case of a new change of scenery. Is all I'm saying. I wouldn't. He's got so much talent that I wouldn't put it past that being the same situation as Lowry Markkanen in terms of a guy finding a new home and then getting back to what they were known for, 20 and 10 kind of situation. Yeah, Looney is another great move. But yeah, I think Golden State are in a situation where there's a lot of salary to cut, and they've got obviously the Wiggins, they've got the situation with Jordan Poole. So yeah, he's someone who's gettable, just like the dudes out in Washington. Um, yeah, I think Dirty's out in Arizona. Correct me if I'm wrong. Man, what are your thoughts on Ayton? But yeah, if Phoenix want to replenish some capital, I'd give them some protected picks since they aren't that valuable. Yeah, I expect with a new coach too, maybe they want to play a different style. CP3, I think, is either going to be moved or retire as well. They need to get younger, faster, more durable. I think playing with KD and Booker as well. They need to upgrade that spot as well. Maybe an Emmanuel Quickly, would be a really, really sexy situation for Phoenix, I think. Sandman's in the building, salute. Yep. What's good, Shah? Let us know which teams we're going to watch out for. But yeah, I think there's a lot of pressure on. We know, Howard hit on the Wizards, right? New president, new GM of ops. A dude who wants to make his stamp on that organization, right? Let's say a KP, Kristaps Porzingis says, "Nah, man, I finished the year well. I shot a great clip. I stayed healthy. Give me my 30 mil. I want my 30. I want my 4 years, 30 mil per. I'll take a player option in the final year, as well. Would you guys entertain KP for 30 mil, 20 mil, at all, or do you want no business of KP?" Yep. Yep. You're in Tucson. Ayton played college. Yeah, amazing talent, but too mellow. So do you think it's kind of a fit? Like, do you think the fact that he's maybe so close to home or where he played that he just needs to get out of that comfort zone? Or do you think that's just his moxie? That's like a Julius Randle that won't kind of change his ways, you know? Let's be real, you're either built for it or you're not. But uh, there is still a ways players can grow. I reference Markkanen again. You know, Larry Markkanen, the knocks on him where he's lazy, he's soft, he's slow, he's all of that. That out of nowhere, Larry Markkanen becomes an All NBA guy. So it can happen. It's unfortunate; it doesn't happen a lot. But yeah, Larry Markkanen was a high draft pick. He came in with a lot of talent, but it's kind of crazy how much he's kind of gone from just being a throw in in trades. You know, I mean, no one was really eager to take a flyer on Larry Markkanen. You know, he was that throw in from the Bulls to the Cavs. You know, and then the Cavs just didn't even think to try to integrate him. I mean, they must be ruining that trade. Best believe that. I mean, considering how soft Allen and Mobley looked. I mean, I know Mobley's so young; he's got amazing upside, but yeah, Larry Markkanen would have done wonders for the Cavs this season. Could you imagine Donovan Mitchell with Larry Markkanen stretching the floor? I mean, Evan Mobley can't stretch the floor like that, and Allen cannot. Yeah, that's a fair point. If Aiton's your fourth best guy, you could be a good team. But what kind of salary can you afford for that? That's the issue. I think they're paying him too much. Yeah, yeah. Shah's on board with the KP situation. Yeah. You know, he would be reinvigorated. He would be reinvested. You know, he's had time to reflect. He made mistakes. We made mistakes. I think, but getting back to business, KP provides. He always provided that need that we need. You know, a very very unique player. No wonder he's called the unicorn. I mean, shot the three ball ridiculous. You know, could hit 3 point balls from the logo. Could block shots. Uh, I always said, what if KP stayed healthy? I just think there's a reason a guy like Kevin Durant of all people gave KP the nickname the unicorn. Um, we always used to go back and forth over Markkanen and KP. You know, throw shade, saying that Markkanen was a KP light kind of situation. I still believe that KP had ability to be the superior career, the superior talent over Markkanen. But salute to Markkanen for upping his game. Also, Ron and John, still Knicks fam in the house. Salute, guys. Let's get it. Great season covering the Knicks. Like, subscribe, and a lot of off-season talk. Man, give us your thoughts on what we'd like to see the Knicks do. You know, it's kind of like people wouldn't mind us making no move rather than the wrong move as well. So we are in a situation where it's unique. Um, yeah, Kaiser says we're stuck with Mitch. He's got to learn how to protect the ball and do some basic things. Yeah, protect the ball. You said it, 100%. Protect the ball. Uh, flash a little hook shot. I know it's unrealistic to expect him to shoot, jump shots. Let's keep it real. But a little hook shot, a little pivot move, something. Yeah, dirty, 100%. Yeah, he's from the Bahamas. Kind of a laid back guy. And some guys, I'm not going to attack no one's kind of desire or character, but the fact is, when some of these young players get paid so well at such a young age, they all they need to do is roll up out of bed and put up 15 and 8, and some of them are just happy with that. First overall selection, you're already earning 15 to 20 mil from day one, and then you put up, like I said, 15 and 10, and some people that's all they want to do. There's a lot of players that didn't achieve their true potential. Yeah, Markkanen also played in Arizona. Also, yeah, salute. Yeah, Sandman, 100%. Mitch is a really, really good trade chip right now. I think the Chicago Bulls could be looking to retool around a dude. They're going to lose Vucevic. I think they're sick of the turnstile at the 5 spot. Nikola Vucevic was a turnstile, a traffic cone on D. Also, a guy like even a guy like the Clippers could want Mitch. You know, heck, even Phoenix send him back out west, possibly closer to home. Um, yeah, Ron says I like the thought of KP, but not alone. I need insurance. Maybe bring in the 3 and D small forward and a backup point guard as well. Yep, 100%. Yeah, a guy we saw like in the Heat series that just couldn't back up Brunson, control the rock for 15 minutes in a game, run some offense, put up some points. You know, maybe a guy like Campaign shakes loose. I'm not the biggest Campaign dude in Phoenix. Dirty can give us his thoughts being from Arizona, from Tucson. But Campaign is that kind of change of pace kind of dude. TJ McConnell, these Nick Nemesises, that can run the break. Maybe an Ish Smith. Yeah, maybe that's a reach. Man, Keith says I would trade Mitch for peanuts at this point. I would much rather start Hartenstein. You know, that's going to be interesting. But yeah, would be careful what you wish for with defense. But yeah, I know the frustration with Mitch. Not getting any offense as well. He needs to grow. Yeah, what's good, Sand, man? Appreciate you always rocking out. Always in the comment section. Let's go. Let's talk to Ron Cleveland on the show. Yeah, 100%. Ron's our guy, and I'll touch base with Ron. Definitely get him on this off season. You can bank on it if Ron's welcome to. If he's willing to, of course. Let's get it. Yeah, Markkanen since his Chicago days. But let's keep it real. KP in his peak with the Knicks or Markkanen with his peak alongside each other. Who would you guys go? Prime KP versus Prime Markkanen. Who's your guy? Darren says, I don't mind KP returning. That'd be something to look forward to. Yep. Maybe we appreciate his game more than we, obviously it helps having Jalen Brunson now, a sidekick. Sandman says KP, I'm in his corner, way better than Markkanen. Yep. Better rim protection, tick. Maybe better 3-point shooting, tick. Health-wise, maybe not. Even after the knee injuries, yep. Shah says Randle IQ or Evan Mitch. Yep. Do we want KP for the 4 or the 5? I honestly think KP's more of the 5 now. He could play a little bit of 4 next to maybe Mitch, maybe next to iHeart. Yep. Aiton used to ride, man, around the campus, made him look 8 feet tall. Yeah, he's a brick. He's a huge guy. AP salute. Yeah, we need improvement. We've got no dependable shooters. Turnovers were bad. Free throws were terrible. Yep. Yeah, let's keep it real. If we were just able to hold our composure, hold our nerve in that game 6, it's not wishful thinking to accept that we would have been playing in a game 7. We were that close. I mean, even in the final 30 seconds, the Knicks still had a great chance. That stretch in the second quarter, fam, where Deuce McBride was running the offense and the Heat went on like an 8-0 run and we lost that 14-point lead, that was toast after that, man. Yep. Yeah, Sandman, if KP's in-house, we also run Mitch. We've got our own twin towers, like the Minnesota tried to do with Gobert and Cat. Yep. Prime KP, yep. Yeah, I'm biased also, but yeah, Prime KP all day. Better rim protector. Kaiser says I heart in foul trouble every game. Also trash on D. Yeah. I think he's had his moments, where he's been solid defensively, but he's not known as a defender at the 5 spot. I just wish we'd utilize more action, more shooting in the corner, just something, man, to open up the offense. Yeah, Tom's on point, salute, man. Yeah, a guy like TJ McConnell, who's gritty, like a Gabe Vincent, pick the dude up full court, take charges, getting a guy's grill, change of pace, runs the point, is like that energizer bunny as well. Yep. We need a guy like him. That's why I mentioned campaign also. Could you imagine a solid, reliable backup point guard backing up Brunson, like a McConnell, like a campaign, like someone like that, a Reggie Jackson. I don't know what kind of contract maybe Reggie Jackson's available on. Maybe he could be ready to contend as a backup point guard. Okay, yep. More fans showing KP some love. AP says KP don't mind coming back. Wish he finished what he started. Yep. Yeah, 100%. He knows the market. It's just going to come down to dollars. Got to make sense. I think. Has KP's mindset changed? If he's still that dude that wants 35 mil, wants to be the number 2, wants to be that dude, I don't think that's the right situation now. I think KP got to be more humble. This is Brunson's show. Now, if KP wants to come back for 25 mil, 4 years, maybe a 4th-year team option kind of dude, like you said, finish what he started, man. Solfinger 12 in the house, salute, man. Appreciate you as well from Louisiana. Got the streets buzzing. Let's go. New York Knicks worldwide. Yeah, Shah's on point. KP, the ability to open up the floor, plays good D. Yeah, basically like what Kevin Love did for the Heat also. Just open up the floor that little bit more, that extra spacing. Let's keep it real. The Heat beat us from shooting. Yeah, it hurts to continue to talk about it, but we know what we need. We need that extra bit of versatility. I said this to John Schmelk last night on the show. If you haven't seen it yet, I made this point. I said, Leon Rose, the time is now to be bold, right? Make that swing like he should have done at the trade deadline, right? If he had traded Obi, that deal with Indiana that was on the table for Chris Duarte, then that would have opened up the backup power forward spot. Then you sign Kevin Love on the waiver wire, and then suddenly Kevin Love is not on the Heat. He's on the Knicks, backing up Julius Randle with Chris Duarte coming off the bench with some shooting. And I think Leon Rose just got a bit too conservative. I know he maybe didn't want to trade Obi at the time, but what could have been. We would have had enough to get through that series. Like I said, you just got to open up your mind. These dudes on the waiver wire, the Knicks could have used them. Yeah, 100%. KP, like Tom says, plays 4, plays 5, versatile as well. You just hope the injuries are a thing of the past. I would love to just see a 4-5 year stretch with Kristaps fully healthy, playing 70 games, shooting 39% from 3, averaging 3 blocks, playing as the number 2, number 3 option on a team as well. I wish the best for him, but it was a bad fit in Dallas. Let's keep it real. Luka don't play any defense. KP couldn't stay healthy. They didn't have a good third option. They didn't play well together. They didn't share the ball. All of those things as well. KP realizes now what it takes to win. Sports Discovery, what's good? Knicks could try to get Kai Soto develop in the summer league for the future rim protector as well. Yeah, Kai Soto got potential, got flashes. Can defend, is huge. 7'4", can defend the rim. Needs to bulk up a bit still, but I think we'll see him in the NBA at some point. Yeah, you like the McConnell suggestion? Yeah, man. Just some toughness, someone that can change the pace, change the look. Maybe Deuce McBride is that dude. Let's see, possibly. But yeah, great conversations, man. As everyone, we get ready to kickstart the weekend. It's been a great show, right? Chatting to Howard Beck, GQ Sports, Locked On Sports Network podcast. Check him out. Checked out all the Locked On podcasts as well. Locked On Knicks, obviously, as well. But Howard's been on, because he's with Locked On, he's also been on all the other teams recently, Locked On Networks, and especially the Wizards one recently. He talked about KP, he talked about Kuzma. I think he's been on the Raptors one also, so you can hear his thoughts on the Raptors situation. He's been on the Heat one. He's been on the Knicks one as well. It's been great to have him on, talk about it as we continue this buzz in the off season, man. More guests, more shows, more buzz as well. Let's get it on the next one. Continue this conversation in the comment section. Replay gang, salute. We've got Jalen Brunson, our superstar, up in here. Top 10 point guard in the league, top 8 point guard. Maybe he's going to be a top 5 point guard next season as well. Get him some stretch 5 help, some wing help, so he doesn't have to do it all by himself. RJ Barrett could step up big next season. Julius Randle might be back to give us all 82 again. Let's see. But I think Leon Rose does need to be bold, needs to make a swing now while Brunson's in his prime. We have all our draft picks. We have all these iffy protected picks, which I'm sick of looking at as well. Let's just make a move as well. See what happens. We've got the draft coming up. I think the Knicks are going to bring in some young talent, and it's going to be fun. We'll get some draft guys on and talk about some of these sleepers and flyers as well. But for now, we out. Peace.